Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. We are picking things up in Exodus chapter 29, which is the chapter about the ordination and consecration of the high priest and his sons for service in the sanctuary. If this is your first time seeing me on video, I would recommend you go back and start at the beginning of the playlist, or at least at the beginning of the tabernacle instructions, because we're working our way verse by verse, paragraph by paragraph through the book of Exodus. So glad you decided to join me for this. We don't spend enough time in these passages, and they have lots of insights for us. So today we're going to cover the first 14 verses of chapter 29. And I'll begin, as usual, by reading from my translation of the Hebrew. I'm Dr. Carmen Imes, Associate Professor of Old Testament at Biola University. Now this is the thing that you shall do for them, to consecrate them to serve as priests for me. Take 1 young bull and 2 perfect rams, and flat bread, and flat cakes mixed with oil, and flat wafers smeared with oil. Of fine wheat flour you shall make them. You shall set them in 1 basket, and you shall bring them near in the basket with the bull and the 2 rams. And Aaron and his sons you shall bring near to the mouth of the tent of meeting, and you shall wash them with water. You shall take the garments, and you shall clothe Aaron with the tunic, the robe of the ephod, the hoshen, and you shall tighten with the skillfully woven band of the ephod. You shall place the turban upon his head, and set the sacred diadem upon the turban. Then you shall take the anointing oil and pour it upon his head. In this way you shall anoint him. His sons you shall bring near, and clothe them with tunics. You shall wrap them with a sash, Aaron and his sons, and twist for them a headband, so the priesthood will become theirs as a perpetual statute. Then you shall ordain Aaron and his sons. You shall bring the bull before the tent of meeting, and Aaron and his sons shall lean their hands upon the head of the bull. You shall slaughter the bull before Yahweh at the mouth of the tent of meeting. You shall take some of the blood of the bull, and shall put it on the horns of the altar with your finger, and all the blood you shall pour out at the base of the altar. You shall take all the fat that covers the innards, the extra lobe of the liver, the 2 kidneys, and the fat which is on them, and you shall send them up in smoke on the altar. The flesh of the bull and its skin and its feces you shall incinerate with fire outside the camp. It is a purification offering. Okay, lots for us to talk about here. We have the high priest being clothed by Moses. Here's our little Bible bricks, Moses. Moses is the primary actor in this chapter. He's doing all the things to the high priest. Unfortunately, we can't undress this high priest because all of the parts are just printed on him except for his hat. We could take his turban off with the gold plate, but everything else is connected, so I can't demonstrate for you step by step. What we need to know is that ordination in the ancient world was culturally expected, and it was a necessary step to qualify the priests for sacred service. So surrounding cultures also had ordination ceremonies for their priests. You can't just walk into the tabernacle and start doing stuff. You have to be qualified to do it, and therefore you have to be set apart from everyone else for this service. Now, the particular ceremony that we're reading about here involves 1 young bull and 2 rams without defect, and some items made with wheat, some bread, fried flatbread, cakes, and wafers. So the bull had to be a young bull. The rams had to be without defect. The fried flatbread we can read more about in Leviticus chapter 6, verses 19 through 23 in English, or verses 12 through 16 in Hebrew. We find out there that the flatbread is made on a griddle, which is why I'm calling it fried flatbread. The cakes are mixed with oil, so they're extra moist. And the wafers are made of finest sifted wheat flour, and they're spread with oil. So as we saw with the high priestly garments, the actual ingredients for the ordination ceremony are of highest quality. So remember that the priest is wearing a tunic of fine Egyptian linen, and the ordination ceremony involves fine Egyptian flour, wheat flour. Bread was really common in Egypt and made in many different shapes, and it was usually unleavened, although it could be leavened. So Moses, as I said, is the primary actor in this chapter. He is the subject of the verb or subject of the action over and over again. Aaron hardly does anything. Aaron and his sons are passive, which is to say, the priesthood is not something they seize for themselves. It's something they receive that is done to them by God's representative. Moses is the authorized representative for this ceremony. Aaron's medallion is called in this passage a nezer or diadem. It's possible that that word is borrowed from the Egyptian word spelled Nzrt, nezert, which refers to the uraeus on Pharaoh's forehead, the snake ornament on his forehead. So Aaron has an ornament as well, also made of gold, which might have reminded them of the Egyptian pharaoh. The headband that the regular priests wore, so this the high priest wears a turban, which is a more elaborate headdress, but the headband of the regular priests, I translated it headband. It's the word chabash, which means to twist or bind, and so it seems like something is being tied around their head. It's possible that verses 4 through 9 involve consecration, and then 9 and following, like the second half of verse 9 and following, is the ordination, that consecration and ordination are two different steps in the process, so that the priest is first made holy, like set apart, and then invited into this ministry that he will have. Sacrifices are prescribed here in this chapter, and we just read about the bull sacrifice, but they're not fulfilled until Leviticus chapter 8. So this is out of chronological order because the instructions came to Moses at Mount Sinai, but they couldn't fulfill these instructions until the tabernacle was all set up and consecrated and ready. You need a functioning tabernacle in order to invite in the priests to be functionally ordained. So that's why we don't read about the ordination of the priests until later in Leviticus. The bull sacrifice is similar to a purification offering. This is, I translated it purification offering. It's the Hebrew word chatat, and there's lots of debate about how to best translate it. A lot of English translations call it a sin offering. The problem with calling it a sin offering is that many of the occasions that require a chatat offering in the book of Leviticus do not involve sin. For example, childbirth. After giving birth to a child, after a certain amount of time has elapsed, the family is supposed to offer a chatat offering. But that's not to suggest that there was anything sinful that happened in the birth of the child. This is really a matter of ritual impurity rather than sin. So Leviticus 12 verses 6 through 8 describes that example. So a chatat offering can refer to either moral or ritual impurity. So it could involve sin, but it doesn't always. And so for that reason, I would prefer to call it a purification offering, and I'm following many other scholars here, including Jacob Milgram. Here, the chatat offering, the purification offering, accomplishes the consecration of Aaron and his sons. So this is similar to the purification offering that's described in Leviticus chapter 4, verses 3 through 12. But here, the blood is applied only to the bronze altar, not to the sanctuary. So in Leviticus 4, the blood is sprinkled inside the sanctuary, but here it's just applied to the altar. And it's applied to the horns of the altar. So just as a reminder, the blood would be daubed on these horns. We don't know exactly how they would have looked, but something like this, these appendages that receive the blood. And Moses leads this instead of the priests leading it. They're not qualified to do it yet. So Moses, the one who's been up on the mountain in the presence of God, accomplishes it on their behalf. The entire offering is unusable. It's removed from human use. So the liver is burned. That means there will be no hepatoscopy, which is the reading of the liver. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about divination and how the Urim and Thummim of the high priest are the only approved method of divination. And there I talked about hepatoscopy. I actually looked up how to pronounce it now, so now I know how to say it. That's not how I was saying it before. So the liver is to be burned. The fat is to be burned, which means they're not going to benefit from the calories of the fat. It's a little hard for us to imagine this because in the modern world, we're often trying to avoid fat to lose weight, but in the ancient world, that was not a problem. The average person had a shortage of calorie intake, and so the fat would have been a particularly calorie-rich and therefore precious part of the animal that they're giving over to God. They would have burned the skin outside the camp. That would have been the smelly part of the offering, and that's burned outside the camp because the purification offering is supposed to be a soothing aroma to God. So this is only the beginning of the ordination of the high priest. Next week, we'll circle back to see what is done with the rams. But today, I just want to note that the high priest presents himself to God, and Moses takes him to the doorway of the sanctuary to do this, or the doorway of the... So it's not entirely clear whether they're standing here by this doorway or here by the doorway of the actual tent. But in either case, they're in liminal space. Liminal space is in-between space. They're not inside or outside. So they're camping out in the doorway as a way of symbolizing to everyone that they're in the process of transition. And in this process, they will be undressed, washed, and redressed in the clothes that qualify them to do this service. And then because they're going to be representing the people, they have to be in right standing before God. So these sacrifices are super important because the high priest cannot lead the people in sacrifices designed to symbolize their forgiveness, the process of reconciliation with God, if he himself has not gone through this. So this chapter is really important because it's taking the leadership of the sanctuary and it's preparing them so that they can serve as leaders. So perhaps our theological takeaway for this week could be that each one of us who desires to be a blessing to other people and to teach others needs to examine our own hearts before God and submit to his cleansing process before we try to lead others to God. Have a great week.